I feel like I should have done this video a long time ago. We're going to talk about the butterfly effect. Now, some of you have heard this. It's been in movies, it's been in literature, it's been all over the place, and it's usually tied to this idea of chaos theory. And the butterfly effect is oftentimes described as this thing is could it be that a butterfly flapping its wings on one side of the planet could cause a chain reaction of events that leads to a tsunami on the other side of the planet? Right? That's kind of the idea behind it. So that's where we get the idea of the butterfly effect. But in more vernacular, kind of common terminology and ways of thinking, what we mean by the butterfly effect is that sometimes small causes can create big consequences. I remember one of the great futurists of our era once said it this way. He talked about that a single snowflake can cause an avalanche. That a single snowflake begins to move and it gathers with a couple more snowflakes and they gather with more and they gather with more, and all of a sudden it builds a kind of momentum that causes a full avalanche. And that's the idea behind the butterfly effect. And so how is this useful for us in terms of decision making and problem solving and coming up with great solutions, or solving problems, literal, metaphorical treasure hunts and so forth? Well, we want to try to capitalize upon the butterfly effect. We want to figure out how to make the best use of our time and our energy. So if I can make a very small movement or a small decision that can create a big result, that is a gift, and we want to pay attention to that. So how do you do that? Almost always, I pick 5 tips, and I jot them down, and then I walk you through one at a time, and we're going to do that right now. Are you ready? Here we go. First one is study past ripples. So ripple is another one of the metaphors that we use with the butterfly effect of you drop a pebble in a pond and it causes these ripples that go all along the way, right? So look for study examples from the past. Just you can look around and try to find examples of where really small things, small changes, even a single sentence, a single phrase, a single action, a small thing, led to a chain reaction of events over time. And just become a student of that so that you can build your confidence and awareness of the fact that this is true. This is real. The butterfly effect is a real thing that happens. It is true that small things can have a big impact, and so you want to figure out how to make use of that. The second one is to spot critical points. So find the one assumption or step that everything else depends upon. Now, I talk about this when I've consulted over the years in different organizations. I will come into organizations and I call these load-bearing walls. So if you're building a house, you may know that some of the walls are there just to kind of as dividers, but there are other walls that actually are load-bearing. They're holding up the house. They're carrying some kind of they're part of the structural integrity of the home. And so if you were remodeling and you didn't know that a particular wall was load-bearing and you just went and you knocked it down, the roof could collapse on you, right? It could destabilize the house altogether. And so when you are working on a house, it's key to figure out where the load-bearing walls are and where they are not. And that allows you to make better decisions. Well, that's the same thing here is when you're trying to solve anything, when you're trying to solve a problem, when you're in the middle of a game or whatever it is, look for the critical points, where everything seems to depend or rely upon or connect to. Try to identify those. Look for those things where you move this one. It's like the game of Jenga. I move this block, everything falls over, or everything is kind of relying on it. It takes some time. It takes some effort. But simply priming yourself to look for those critical points, those load-bearing walls, can allow you to see things differently than you would have before. It also allows people to have a little more understanding and empathy for how other people make decisions. Imagine, even in people's individual lives, people can be going through some really tough things, and you may think that they have this habit or bad habit or something that they just seem to cling to, and you feel like, well, why don't they just get rid of that? Well, it may be that they realize that they're in a time right now where things feel a little bit fragile or tough in their life, and they feel like that's a bit of a load-bearing wall for them. And if they were to move that, they don't feel like they have enough else built up to hold things together. So yeah, they understand that maybe they need to get rid of that habit or that thing over time. But if you are renovating a home and you have a load-bearing wall that you're getting rid of, you don't just knock it down. You have to put reinforcements in it before you knock it down. So maybe those people recognize that, and that's why they're not moving things over. I've even had that. I encourage people when they're talking to leaders in organizations and they wonder, why is this leader not getting rid of that person? Because that person doesn't seem to be carrying their weight in the organization. And what they may not know is what the leader sees. And maybe the leader sees that that particular person isn't a good long-term fit for the organization, but they also know that that particular person is doing certain things and has certain tasks and roles and knowledge that if it were to disappear could jeopardize the entire organization or destabilize it. And so they're trying to put up those reinforcements before they make a decision or before they move any further on that particular matter. And that can be true in all sorts of decisions in our lives. So it's a good one to keep in mind as we're going through this. The third one then is to test for fragility. So this is kind of related to looking for the critical point. Sometimes you have to do it through a little bit of trial and error. So you remove one element and you see what collapses. So you do things systematically, one at a time. I'm going to try, instead of just revamping everything instantly, I'm going to try removing one thing or adding one thing, and I'm going to see how that affects all of the other stuff. So you take a tiny experiment, micro experiment, tiny change, remove or add, and then stop and observe, and then be ready to put it back if you need to, or readjust if it's causing more problems, since the butterfly effect could come into play, and it could cause a far bigger problem than you realized in the first place. I will give you an example of one that some people are probably really emotional about. People might have strong convictions one way or the other, but I'll give you an example even from current events that I think I'm going to do in another video, and I'll just do one that's specifically dedicated to it, that's maybe a corollary to the butterfly effect, and that's the example of Cracker Barrel. So just stay tuned. I think I'm going to do another video, and I'll post it maybe alongside this one. The fourth one then is to do really fast autopsies. So an autopsy is after you try something, what is the outcome? Trace back and to see sort of the smallest causes. So you're going to be changing things. You're making decisions all the time. So get really good at documenting what happens when you make the decisions. So often we just make decisions and we move on, and we don't even realize the consequences and the implications of our decisions. So this step is about getting better at pausing and stopping and seeing how the decision impacts other things. Jotting it down, learning from it. Sometimes you say, oh, okay, wow, I didn't expect that result. You noted it and you move on. Next time, you're more aware of it. In leadership, this is a really important skill to develop, to get better at decision making over time. But it's good in treasure hunting and gameplay, in decisions in our lives, in a lot of places. And then the last one that I'll give you is do some what-if scenarios. So you can simulate alternative paths to see their hidden leverage points. And this one isn't a real-world kind of situation where you're experimenting and actually changing something. But if you can actually just kind of map out in your mind's eye and on paper, here are some possible changes I can make. And then you try to, the best of your ability, play out how those changes could affect things. Of course, it can be really useful to get feedback from other people to give you their thoughts. What you have to note, though, is people are attached. Change is hard, and people are really attached to how things are sometimes. Even if they're uncomfortable, the present is uncomfortable. Sometimes they prefer a known uncomfortable to an unknown comfort, a known more comfortable situation. And so you get feedback from people. You do have to understand, though, that you have to strain it a little bit, because if you're going to do some what-if scenarios, people may give you kind of worst-case scenarios that are maybe not most likely to happen. You don't want to dismiss them, and you also don't want to just wholeheartedly adopt exactly what they say as kind of gospel truth. But you can respect what they say and their insights and learn from them. And I have benefited from that so much over the years. So there you have it. There are 5 tips for how you can respond to this phenomenon that we call the butterfly effect, that small causes can have big consequences, and we can use that in good ways. Well, I hope you find this useful, and as always, I welcome your comments.